Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in the Community Care Smart Assistive Technology Collaborative webinar. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we are meeting today. We pay our respects to all elders, past, present, and emerging. My name is Georgina Gould, and I am the Business Manager at Global Community Resourcing and Project Coordinator of the Community Care Smart Assistive Technology Collaborative. I will be moderating today's webinar, which is focusing on developing, evaluating, and co-creation of assistive technologies. Our webinar today is being hosted by Global Community Resourcing for our online platform, the Community Care Smart Assistive Technology Collaborative. The purpose of the collaborative is to promote the use of smart assistive technology in service provision and delivery throughout Australia and the world. We have been fortunate to work on a wide range of local, national, and international projects with researchers from across the globe to share and create innovative ideas in community care settings. Our webinars are created based on feedback and requests we receive through the collaborative, and we aim to connect diverse perspectives in research and development, as well as the creation and deployment of assistive technology in the primary health sector. Our webinar focuses on topics ranging from cybersecurity to innovation, business transformation, and primary health. And we are proud to have more than 70 free webinars, which have gathered over 10,000 views on our YouTube channel. Just a reminder that if you have not formally registered at the collaborative site, it is accessible to all and free to register. A range of resources, news, articles, and collaboration opportunities are regularly uploaded to the platform, and you can visit www.sacommunity.com.au to become a member today. Please note that Global Community Resourcing, or the Community Care Smart Assistive Technology Collaborative, is not promoting or endorsing any particular product, research entity, or organisation. The purpose of our webinars is to serve and inform viewers of various smart assistive technologies currently in development and/or deployment. In today's webinar, our first guest speaker, Professor Rachael McDonald, will explore development, evaluation, and co-creation of assistive living technologies. Professor McDonald is the Director of MedTechVic Health. The hub creates innovative enabling technologies, products, and services to enhance the lives of people with disabilities, their families, and the people that support them. Professor McDonald is a clinical research and teaching health professional with an interest in enabling people with long life disabilities to participate in life situations. She has worked extensively in the field in both children's services and adult settings. Welcome, Professor McDonald, to the Community Care Smart Assistive Technology Collaborative. Please take it away.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's a great privilege to sort of share with you our work at the MedTechVic Hub. So my name is Rachael McDonald. I'm the Director of the MedTechVic Hub, as you've just learned. I did want to, before we start, actually do an acknowledgement of country. So MedTechVic Hub is based at Swinburne University. Swinburne University is on Wurundjeri land. So we'd like to respectfully acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional owners of all of the land on which all of Swinburne's Australian campuses are located in Melbourne's east and outer east. And I'd like to pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. We're really honoured to recognise our connection to Wurundjeri country, its history, culture and spirituality throughout the locations, and we strive to ensure that we operate in a manner that respects and honours the elders and ancestors of these lands. We also respectfully acknowledge Swinburne's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander staff, students and alumni, partners and visitors. But I'd also like to acknowledge and respect the traditional owners of lands across Australia, their elders, ancestors, cultures and heritage, and recognise the continuing sovereignties of all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander nations. So what's the MedTechVic Hub? This is our sort of introduction, and I've just the MedTechVic Hub was formed in 2020 or 2021, right in the middle of the COVID pandemic. And it was part of, funded by the Victorian Higher Education Innovation Fund. So this was the Victorian government pushing innovation in terms of new areas of technology and technology development, or areas that needed innovation. So myself and another colleague, Professor Sally MacArthur, who is at Deakin, put together some information around this area of MedTech, which is about assisted living technologies, and specifically looking at people who are the group that don't get a lot of say in their assistive technologies. So the MedTechVic Hub works to support and connect individuals and organisations across assistive and medical device sector in Victoria and Australia now, since those days, ensuring that we can do rapid clinical and technical prototyping, leading to manufacturing of new ideas. On the left, you can see our pillars. We have challenge projects, enabling technologies platform, and clinical advisors network, and a business readiness program. And I'll go through all of those in a little bit more detail later on. But our goal is really to bring together individuals with living experience of disability, their caregivers, their allied health professionals, their clinical professionals, together with engineers and designers and industry, so that we can start to really co-create products and services that enhance lives. Now, all of that sounds very jargony. What do we mean by this? Well, our vision is to co-create medical and assistive technology, if you like, and I'll go a bit more into what that sort of distinction is. But quite often when somebody has a disability or an impairment that necessitates assistive technology, it's usually discovered because there's a problem that needs to be solved. And so you often have a very clever professional, maybe an engineer, maybe an occupational therapist or a physiotherapist or an orthotist, who then solves that problem by creating some technology. But what we find is that lots of people don't like those technologies. They're very functional. I've had conversations, for example, where people have told me, health professionals have said, it doesn't matter what something looks like as long as it's functional. What we know is that it does matter what something looks like. It does matter about somebody's functionality. People will use a lot of these technologies because they need to. But if they don't want to, it creates a whole range of other problems for the person. So our vision is to create technology that is co-created and also co-evaluated. So the evaluation is not just what I think as a health professional is important, but what all of the different parts of the person's identity, life is about. Also, things have to be useful and usable, both for the person and the supports around them. We also know that if we're looking at assistive technologies, these are things that need to be accessible and adjustable. Everybody is an individual, so it's difficult. Assistive technology can be difficult because you can't take one thing off the shelf and apply it to everybody. And so we need things that are accessible and adjustable, but those actually also create other, say, engineering or design problems. Innovative and manufacturable. Those are things that we'll go into a little bit later on, but we have an enormous amount of innovation in terms of creation of products, etc. And what we really want to do is to make sure that we apply the learnings from other industries or from other creation or other design and engineering into this space. Things that are desirable. This is in red because what we really want is these not to be products that people use because they have to, but products that are not only useful, but things that people like to use, and locally made for local and global needs. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on as well. What I wanted to highlight with this slide, though, is that we place people with lived experience and their families and their supports at the very centre. But we also partner with industry, and we are agnostic as to who the industry is that we partner with. We partner with manufacturers, we partner with health and disability organisations, to do with whatever support or service or product is desired by the people with lived experience who are directing the process. But we partner with our MedTechVic team. Now, we've deliberately in our MedTechVic team not gone just for engineers or health professionals. We have health professionals, we have designers, we have a design coach who runs a lot of our co-design workshops. We have developers, researchers, and engineers. But one of the other things is that we are at Swinburne University of Technology, and the kind of motto of Swinburne and at university is where people and technology work together for a better world. So we're really fortunate that we are under that banner. And what that means is that we can reach into all of the really fabulous talent and colleagues that are around Swinburne University. So we have a robotics lab, for example. We have a factory of the future. And so we're really, really fortunate that we are a university that works across boundaries. One of the things one of the reasons why the Victorian government was really interested in putting this kind of medtech centre together is that Melbourne is actually one of the top 3 medtech centres globally. That's fairly important. And it's partly because of its size in Australia. We have about a quarter of quarter of Australia's population in Victoria, and it's close together, unlike some of our other states. But also that what we really wanted to do at MedTechVic was to focus on the co-design of enabling an assisted living technology aspect of medtech. What does that mean? What that means is that assisted living technologies are a part of medtech, and we'll go into that later. But also in our region, we don't have a lot of opportunity. As we know, our neighbours don't have a lot of opportunity for the extremely expensive assistive technologies that come from elsewhere. So the opportunity of assisted living technology and medtech is not only for Victoria and not only for Australia and partnership, but really to start developing some of those opportunities for local co-design with our neighbours. To give you a bit of context, and I know this group will understand assistive technology, but there is a case, if you like, for funding of assistive technologies or funding of manufacturing of assistive technologies, not just from the National Disability Insurance Scheme or aged care or any of those things, but actually from a kind of manufacturing perspective. So we know that assistive technologies not only refer to the products and devices or the tech, but they also refer to the people and supports that are required to wrap around them. And that's the people and technology working together for a better world, which is Swinburne's motto, as I said. What I think is kind of often not really referred to is that assisted living technologies or assistive technologies are a type of medical technologies. So they also need to be developed along protocols, they need regulations, etc. But the regulations for assistive technology are often less than those for other forms of medical technologies. But they do need to be developed along similar processes, and they need to follow similar development protocols. They need to be regulated, and they need to be safe for the public. We know that there are, from the World Health Organization and from AT Scale and AT 2030, that there are lots and lots of people in the world who need assistive technologies, and we know that most of them can't get access to appropriate assistive technologies. And we also know that this number is rapidly rising. What we'd also like to see is that with this mechanism of co-creation that we work with, that this is an exemplar of medtech development. It creates a workforce that can work across assisted living technologies, but also medical technologies. It creates a curiosity, and it also gives a basis for the idea around user-centered design. So there's the other sorts of numbers, if you like, that are convincing, not just for governments, but for kind of private sector manufacturers and funders, is that, as we know, Australia has 0.3% of the world's population. It's absolutely tiny. But last year, in 2022, although we don't have the figures for 2023 yet, obviously, the National Disability alone spent over $1 billion on assistive technology. That's not a little amount of money. That equates to about 5 to 6% of the world's spend on assistive technology. So even though we're this tiny country, we really are kind of overrepresented in terms of how much we spend. But if you add together people buying their own assistive technology, purchasing through aged care, rehabilitation, insurance schemes, the budget for assistive technology is more like about $3.2 billion. So when people sort of say this is a kind of a market that isn't important, or it's small, or we shouldn't be investing research and development or manufacturing, we're actually bigger than many other equivalent markets that get a lot more funding and support. And so this is something that I think we really need to advocate for, because we import 90% of our assistive technologies. And that's a lot of money that can be saved, but it's also a lot in terms of environment, climate impact, etc., because all of those environmental technologies, assistive technologies, have to be imported. We manufacture only about 10% of the technology that we use. We import from companies that are based in, North America and Europe and places like that, which is great, and partly because they have such wide markets. But what we've also found over long periods of time is that this has led, particularly over COVID, but even after that, to supply chain issues and extra support costs and difficulties with people being able to get changes in a way that means that they can get their needs met. We also import a lot of the different components of technology. So even when we're able to grow and manufacture our own technologies in Australia, we import the components of them. And these are things that we should be able to manufacture here. So part of our process at MedTechVic is to start to identify where some of these products and services can start to be looked at here, with the idea that people will get what they need in a much more rapid way, but also what they need. So what's the MedTechVic Hub, and that kind of, how does all of that previous work that we've talked about relate to that? Well, we have an enabling technologies platform. We have different parts. An enabling technologies platform is, if you like, the kit or the practical environment that we work towards. So we have a living assistive technology lab based at Hawthorn at our Swinburne campus. And that assistive technologies living lab was co-created with people with different forms of difficulties. So people with hearing impairment and visual impairment, and also people with mobility impairment. So we've co-created this space so that we've got, for example, very smooth floors that are also sound dampening. We have skirting boards that are flush to the wall. So you get the contrast that somebody with a visual impairment needs, but the skirting board doesn't get in the way of somebody with a mobility impairment. So we welcome, if you're ever in Melbourne, as Dr. Zeus says, if you're ever up this way with your teeth, please come and see us at the Living Assistive Technology Lab. We'd love to show you this space. But it was co-created with not just access consultants, but we had a number of people with living experience coming and telling us how they wanted that space. And we use the space for co-creation workshops. We have a small maker space. It's a very flexible space, so we can do all of these things. And we also use it for teaching students. And we're just about to sort of start some piloting some work with people with lived experience of disability, supporting them to learn how to do 3D printing themselves, for example. We have a volumetric video capture studio, which is based at our Transformative Media Technologies Centre. So this is part of our partnership with the whole of Swinburne. The volumetric capture studio is part of the Film and Television School. And that sounds a bit weird, doesn't it? But what that means is that the volumetric video capture is where you take videos using depth cameras, and then you can create content for film and television. But we've slightly adapted that. We use this for creating things like virtual reality, but we've also matched that with other types of software and trying to put sort of, say, a skeleton on that body so that we can then start to add technology to that person. So this is a kind of blue sky kind of arrangement that we've got, where we're trying to develop a world where you can have an avatar and you can sit in that world to see yourself in that world. And then we have things like microscopes that people can use for sort of basic research. We have our Clinical Innovation Fellowship program, and we've just finished our 3rd cohort of Clinical Innovation Fellows. That sounds all a bit kind of posh, doesn't it? But what this is that we have an 8-week program whereby what we do is we have a kind of just right skilling program. Often health professionals or engineers or people who work in health are really interested and have good ideas about products or services that will solve the problems of the people that they work with. But we'll sort of say things like, I don't understand why this just doesn't happen. So this program is one which we've created where people take their idea and spend 8 weeks developing that idea with people from business, people from manufacturing, people from health services, innovation specialists, IP specialists, and they start to develop that idea. And from that, they either decide this was a really good idea and I'll start to, take this forward, or they'll say, actually, this wasn't a great idea. And maybe I really know about innovation and I can either commission someone else to do this, or I realize that maybe this needs a lot more work. And we encourage these clinical fellows also to start really working with end users, who is identifying who the end user is and who they need to work with to get this product or service or idea. If I can give you one example, came from someone who works in the spinal cord injuries unit, and they said, look, every time somebody goes home from the spinal cord injuries unit, they'll often need padding on their toilet seat. And every time they need this, there's one product available. It has old fixings. And so what we need to do is we need to get someone to change the fixings on the toilet seat so people can actually go home and go to the toilet. So this was one of our clinical fellows who had this problem and turned it into an idea. And through fellowship, went on to further develop that through another funded program. And now there's a product that will be further developed, meaning that there's a nice product that is viable in terms of being manufactured and created and sold. And that will be something that we hope to get on the shelves next year. Another person was looking at a different kind of product altogether, which is how to solve some of the time that's wasted in hospitals with people sitting on the phone waiting for people to answer their pages. And they came up with a whole raft of other things and they put that into practice and they saved 12 hours a week of time. So they don't necessarily have to come out with a product, but what we try and do is support the understanding that of health professionals that they need to go to both the end users and that there's something that needs to be targeted and that there's an outcome. Our MedTechVic Challenge program is our research program, and we call it a challenge program because these are challenges that come to us from partners or from end users or from both. So some of our challenge programs have been about how we can look at using technology, or how we can ensure that people have control and choice in their home when they live in supported disability accommodation. Others have been, how can we ensure that people who attend day programs actually have control and choice over their day programs? How can they have the activities that they want to need? And so we've done a whole raft of research under that, but some of these have come out with products. So for our project that was around control and choice in day programs, we found that people who were end users were often actually not getting their needs listened to. So we've developed activity cards, an activity card accessible assessment tool that can be accessed by we tested this tool with about 20 people, many of whom weren't able to speak verbally, had a lot of difficulty with communication. And we tried this tool with 20 people who use day services and found that all but 19 were able to answer in some way for themselves. And what was even more exciting about that was that when they were talking to us or telling us or communicating with us their goals and needs, people who were supporting them were often there, and they were surprised by some of the goals or the activities that people wanted to undertake or that they were good at already. So this is something. We've also had some other challenge programs which are much more around technology, some around development of smart walking frames, etc. So that's one of the things that's really a kind of key. We're actually agnostic to the type of technology as long as it meets the user's needs. And our process is that we actually try and understand the user, and we'll talk to that a little bit later on. The Future Map workshops, I talked earlier about innovation and manufacturing. One of the ways that that manufacturing is changing is using a sort of future map technology, but using Industry 4.0 techniques. At Swinburne, we have a really fantastic centre called the Factory of the Future. What we know is that old manufacturing techniques are very labour intensive, quite dirty, and not really economically viable in Australia due to all sorts of things like labour cost, resource, distance. What the Industry 4.0 kind of understanding is that we can make manufacturing and creation of products both more customizable, that is, that people can get what they want through changing machines, but also more cost effective and cleaner. And by cleaner, we mean that not travelling distances, because the distance is travelled via digitally rather than via trucks, etc. So this is a whole raft of workshops that we have run with manufacturers to get them to understand how they may start to move towards manufacturing 4.0 or computer-assisted manufacturing. And we really hope to run some more of those again in the future, specifically around assistive technologies now that people are starting to use those techniques. And there's two more that we're really excited about that we do. And one of them is the Lived Experience Program and Network. And so this is one of the kind of products, if you like, that we're most proud of. We originally had conceived having people with lived experience advising industry, thinking particularly around manufacturing. And when we went and talked with people, they said, well, I actually don't feel confident to do that. So when we went back and started thinking about, well, what do people need? And some of the people that we were talking to who felt that they weren't confident were in really high-powered jobs, running companies, running assisted living companies, for example. So we did a whole lot of work exploring what might you need to feel confident? And then we ran a project where we co-designed an educational framework. And this was something that was coordinated by somebody who had a lived experience of disability themselves, but was not in that process. And we, with 12 people with lived experience over a sort of 12-week period, in conjunction with a partner, the Health Issues Centre, we co-created an educational framework that people with lived experience of disability could undertake to give them the skills and the confidence to start in positions where they advise industry, and that industry could be manufacturing, it could be health, it could be disability. And we're at the process really seeking the next round or developing the next round where we put those modules, and there were 3 modules that came out of that, around being confident, around understanding innovation, and around advocacy, becoming a self-advocate, and also becoming an advocate. And we're sort of seeking to develop that further. And what we'd love to do with that process is that we'd love that to be not only developed, but also delivered by people with lived experience into the future, so that it becomes sustainable. And developing a network of people also. And our final kind of process that we have is our partnered PhD program. So we have a funded PhD program, so people have scholarships. But what we've tried to do is to ensure that there are always people with lived experience in the partnership program, but that also people from 2 different disciplines supervising the student. So you might have an engineer and an occupational therapist, or you could have somebody from business and somebody from design. And the reason why is that we see that innovation is going to come from that really big multidisciplinary team, the designers and the engineers working with the end users and the health professionals. So we make sure that we break down some of the barriers, but also some of the hierarchies. At the absolute hub or center of all of this is the techniques that we use. We tend to use the double diamond approach by the UK Design Council, which has a lovely framework. But we always start with co-creation challenge workshops. And the co-creation challenge workshops is really a model for collaboration. And it's an idea about co-creating with everyone in the room. And this has been a really big journey for us, because we have co-creation workshops are a design technique. And, there's all sorts of things like challenge workshops or hackathons or sprints. And all of these are kind of, becoming very well known in terms of development and design thinking and co-design. But we've spent a lot of time working with people with lots of different needs to make sure that these are accessible for everybody. Who we need to listen to are people with lived experience, but also caregivers, support organisations, and all of the rest of the people in that list: designers, engineers, researchers, clinicians, and allied health professionals. But we also have really come to understand that people have different ways of learning, different ways of contributing. And often traditional design sprints and traditional challenge workshops have actually excluded people living with disabilities, or excluded people living with issues. Say, if you fatigue, it's really hard to take part in a 6-hour sprint, where people are thriving off their energy. But we still think that your contribution, of course, is really valuable. So how can we do this? So we've designed co-creation workshops where, for example, we'll have a small team of people working with a person with lived experience. And the person with lived experience may meet for 10 to 15 minutes and then go away, have a rest, or do what else they need to do in their world. Having maybe a designer and a health professional nutting out some of those problems, coming back, presenting to the person with lived experience, who then says yes, no, directs, etc. That's one way, for example. Ensuring that we have, say, interpreters in those workshops, or ensuring that if we have that, instead of running that 6-hour workshop, we have a 1 to 2 hour workshop with rest breaks regularly, for example, having materials in different formats, including tactile formats. So we spend a lot of time preparing for the workshop, talking with people before an interaction to make sure that everybody is going to be able to participate in a way that is meaningful to them. And then we ask them after the process, how did you find that? What could we do better? So by asking people how they want us to work with them, we enable people to give us their to participate in the way that they want and need to do. So that's kind of that's in a nutshell really what the MedTechVic Hub has. And over the last sort of 2 years, our achievement is really that we've highlighted in some unusual areas, not just in health or disability, but in other kinds of manufacturing, a need for growth and investment in really what is an underdeveloped area in Australia. We've actually found from mainstream manufacturing that there is an interest in investment in this sector. We created co-designed products and services from scratch, and we've got 6 products that are ready to start going to the next collaboration and development, 6 products that are ready for local development, and we've got 2 programs working with external partners, and we've got other products and services. I think there's about 22 that we've kind of developed, and some are actually gone to much more traditional research kind of routes, because it's not really about a product, it's about understanding a little bit more about something. I think one of the things is that we've actually enabled sector collaboration. So we've got some people, for example, working with manufacturers like Bosch, for example, starting to look at how some of the manufacturing techniques can be used in a disability support organisation, for example. We have a model, a co-designed model for a program for rapid design and prototyping of sustainable equipment. And we have sort of some fee-for-service activities that works off that. But I think the kind of co-creation model where everybody is valued equally is really important. And we've leveraged some funding as well, and we'll be also requesting a whole lot more funding from unusual sources, like things like the National Reconstruction Fund and the Australia's Economic Accelerator. Because this area is just as important and just as fundable and just as economically viable as other areas. It's just that it hasn't received the same amount of attention. So what is the value proposition if you're looking at this and you're kind of coming from a government outside of health and disability sector? What is it? Well, I think, collaboration and networking is something that actually is funded by government. They're encouraging collaboration and networking across different industries and different sectors. I think also innovation and research. It's on every agenda from every government. We're looking at innovation and research and where's the next part. Accelerating the development of locally produced medical and assistive technologies. And through some of those techniques, we sort of see assistive technology development as almost like a gateway drug towards medtech development, because it doesn't require quite the same amount of regulation as other medtech, the medtech that certainly goes inside people's bodies, but it still needs to do a really good and competent protocol. And we'll go into that in a second. We are looking at, and the value proposition is the use of digitization for efficient and cost-effective production of assistive technologies using computer-aided design, computer-aided manufacturing, the types of things like digital robots that are starting to be used a lot more in manufacturing, just as applicable to assistive technologies as any other technology. Additive manufacturing or 3D printing, particularly looking at 3D printing of some, higher level metals, automation and mass customization. If there's an area that's right for mass customization and digital twinning, it's assistive technology, because things need to be customized for individuals. So the types of things that are being used, the types of manufacturing techniques that are used are really, really relevant to assistive technology. I think the other thing is the user-centered approach. Favoured by government departments, when we're actually looking at anything to do with human services, we want to understand that you've got the end user at the heart, and we do, and we'd like to kind of continue to really build that across the whole industry. I think with the value proposition in terms of this is starting to have this market access and adoption for economic growth, but also if we are able to produce assistive technologies, supports and products, supports and services, then there's economic growth and job creation, which we really kind of need at the moment in Australia and in Victoria. We then see this as something that we can internationally expand. We've got a fantastic opportunity here, and generation for local intellectual property for Australia through a thriving sector. So there are challenges, and we just wanted to point out what some of these challenges are. There are challenges in everything. We don't want to sound very Pollyanna-ish and say this is, let's just have this great thing and why don't we go? Well, some of the challenges are the regulation, because assistive devices are, of course, regulated by the Therapeutic Goods Administration to ensure that devices are that are purchased from Australia are completely acceptable in terms of efficiency, honesty and safety. And what that regulation really means is that therapeutic claims made of a product are backed by scientific evidence, designed according to essential principles and conform to good manufacturing practice. But that's some of the things that we actually kind of start to do with our development through MedTechVic. We don't just take a product. Our end user design is where we start. We solve problems. We undertake our co-creation workshops, but then we go back to make sure that these are verified products. After the workshop, where we've got the idea, we will go through the design process. We will look at the literature. We will do patient searches to make sure that there is scientific evidence. And once we've actually co-created those products, we are starting to take them down the route of doing experiments with people to make sure that, that they are doing what they say they do. One of the things that actually sort of comes up very, very often when people ask, who is the customer? What's the customer base? So if you're looking at a customer base for something like a television, like an electronic product like a television, you can have marketing people saying, this is the type of person who will have your 22-inch television, and this is the type of person who will need your 24-inch television. When you're looking at assistive technology products, it's not quite as easy as that. And so one of the kind of challenges is identifying who the products are, what the products are and who they're for, because, you'll often need a recommendation by, say, a physiotherapist or an occupational therapist for a wheelchair or a walking frame or a hoist. Yet the customer is the payer, and the payer might be the NDIS who are paying through a person, or it might be through an agency. And unlike other medical devices where you have a procurement officer at a health service, there isn't necessarily a procurement officer that is relevant. It might be a disability support organisation. So one of the ways that we've kind of tried to address that kind of customer base is by actually looking at individual products and then working out who all of the different kind of funding mechanisms might be, and starting to put numbers around how many products sold in that area, or how many products might be needed. And we're working with partners as well to sort of get some of the data that shows us how well products perform, etc. In this particular space, navigating funding bodies is a little bit challenging. There are lots of funding bodies. There's statewide equipment programs, there's third-party insurance, as well as National Disability Insurance Scheme, aged care, etc. But again, working with health professionals and working with end users, we can start to understand that. It's really about having people who understand the landscape. And the final challenge I've kind of put, and obviously this is just a snapshot of challenges, but the final challenge I've got is working with health professionals. And that sounds, health professionals will be going, oh my goodness, well, I'm easy to work with, I'm multidisciplinary, etc. And what I mean by that is that health professionals are a very risk-averse population of people, and they need to be, because they're highly regulated. Many of them are either AHPRA, Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency, regulated, which means that they've got a statutory regulatory body, or self-regulated, which means actually sometimes the self-regulated professions have even more rules around them. And this is really important. Health professionals are highly regulated because they need to keep the public safe. Health professionals can't just go and do whatever they want to do. They have to adhere to a code of ethics and a code of conduct. And what that means is that they can't always go outside of those rules and codes of conduct, even if they want to. And that regulation is sometimes seen as hampering innovation. What we see is that by working together, different professionals like designers, for example, who are not necessarily as regulated as health professionals, understand what some of those issues can be, and that we can work through them together. Because if you're actually looking at any design or engineering project, you always have to work within constraints. This is just one of the constraints. And that goes back to backed by scientific evidence. Working together, understanding that restraint, means that we can actually then really go forward with looking at research that addresses some of those concerns, for example. I won't go through that one. The outcome. The outcome of what we've actually, achieved, or what we're going to achieve. The outcome is a commercialisation of locally produced products, services and supports. Increasing AT manufacturing in Australia, both with international companies and with local companies, is really important. It's a huge market, but currently met by overseas capacity. We have no problem with overseas companies coming and working with us. We need that. We don't want to undercut that. But we do want to increase some of the local production and support that, using our manufacturing 4.0 capabilities, which is actually going to be even better for some of those big companies. We've got this fantastic manufacturing 4.0 ecosystem in Australia, just as good as many other, and actually better than many other places who are still using old techniques. How can we do this to create together? But even more so, this then gives opportunities for our local neighbours in Oceania and the Pacific to have access to these tools and AT and products as well. We also know that there's a local production manufacturing of $1 billion sector. We know there's a growth of the NDIS, for example, by at least 8%. So if we took that for assistive technology, that's not a bad growth. But we also are looking at aged care, etc. We also see that there is an opportunity for export to the local region, but digitising, exporting our digital files so that people in our local region can actually sort of locally digitise and manufacture some of these techniques. Really, really importantly, not having to wait for 6 months until something is shipped from somewhere, as an extreme example, means that people have more choice and control over end products. Really important for end users, and that's where we start and where we end. End users, people with disability, people living in aged care, who can have products that are customised to them, and that when things go wrong, they can get them locally replaced, sourced, or adjusted. This then can also start to reduce the cost to state and national equipment programs. Again, as we know, the costs are only going to go up, the numbers are going up, and therefore we really need this to be sustainable for Australia. We need everybody to have access to the products and the foundational services, if you like, that they need, and increasing funds flowing into Victoria and Australia. And I say Victoria because our original funding was from the Victorian Higher Education Innovation Fund, but we see this as a national proposal or product, projection, if you like. I think the other thing that's really important is that we have a thriving assistive and enabling sector, that it is seen as just as important when we look at those numbers, when we look at that we have this thriving sector that is directed and supported by end users. As we've just said previously, this is less highly regulated than other medtech. So there's an opportunity for less specialised fabrication, but that helps people to understand the tools and the techniques that are needed, and provides, one of the things we have is a model for co-creation. One of the ways we've done this, and that we're starting to do this, and remembering that we're only 2 years old, we have a lot of industry connections, and we see this as absolutely key. Connecting people, connecting the university sector with the Victorian medtech community, with the Australian medtech community, medtech manufacturers and suppliers, local and international, manufacturing and development sector outside of those, professional associations, health, disability, and government departments. By working together, we can start to really create this sort of ecosystem. And one of the ways that we've been able to do this locally is that we have a small team. So we have a director, who's me, we have some senior academics, and we have some postdoctoral people. But we also have people that are really important, that are not necessarily academics, but are working in a kind of hybrid way. We have product design and mechanical engineering. We have clinical advisors, and that's really important. We have people who are working on the ground in rehabilitation centres or disability service organisations who are able to advise us on the ground. And people with lived experience are part of that as well. We have a program manager and a technical officer who supports our labs, and we have our industry-focused PhD program. But what you can sort of see there is that, as we said, Swinburne University is a university of technology, and we have 6 schools. We have health science, engineering, social science, media, film and education, science, computing and engineering technologies, and business, law and economics. We also have a thriving vocational education centre. We're a dual sector university. So we work across all 6 of the schools at the university, also across the Victorian, the vet sector. So people who are doing entry-level school leaver qualifications can be part of this as well. We have platforms and research centres such as the Factory of the Future, the Manufacturing Factors Research Institute, but also the Iverson Health Innovation Research Institute. So we work across all of the schools, we work across the TAFE sector and our platforms and research centres, together with innovation and design. And I did leave out design and architecture, who are also one of our key partners. And we are, because of the size of Swinburne University, it's a moderate-sized university, but it means that one of the things that's really important is that we try and work across disciplines and schools as much as possible. So the final slide that I have really is that we really kind of would love the opportunity for you to work with us, for people who are interested in this space, to explore how we can work together. Whilst we've got this fantastic centre, and there's, I think, about 10 of us, as you just saw on the previous slide, with lots of disciplines, we don't necessarily want to stay as our little group of people doing things. We see the opportunity is in everybody working together and collaborating together. So there are lots of opportunities. We've got existing projects and products, and obviously we can't, with 10 of us, we can't, even if we want to, take all of these forward. So we really welcome the opportunity to work with you if you're a manufacturer or a supplier, to sort of look at, actually maybe we could start taking some of these projects. Do you have a need, particularly if you're an end user? Do you have a need that you want to explore? And we may be the people who can help you to explore what that need is and pass you on to someone else, or explore that need and develop it further. Or, you know, do you have an innovative idea? We're very happy to sort of start. We have publications. We're generating publications as we speak. We've just finished a whole lot of reports that are published on various states and turning some of those into journal articles. But we're also happy to start thinking about how we can work and co-author publications with people in the sector. We are applying for funding all the time, and we're really happy to have people as part of those applications. We don't just want to keep these to ourselves. We're happy to support projects. So we've just been supporting people with projects that have gone in, and we don't necessarily take funds from those projects, but we're really happy to support people, particularly if they're people with lived experience, putting in opportunities for the first time. And, you know, we could do joint projects or leading projects if you wish. So there's lots of opportunities there. As I said, we work with the whole of Swinburne, so there's also commercialisation opportunities. And even if we're not the people and you have a commercial idea that you want to take forward, we can put you together with our commercialisation arm, who have proof of concept funds or other types of funds, or you could, you know, going through our clinical innovation fellowship. And I think also we can help to start to broker partnering with external people. So I'd like to just say thank you for the opportunity to present. This has been a really great privilege, and I hope coherent. We really are collaborative, and we want the opportunity to sort of keep supporting and growing this sector. I think that the organisation that we're on at the moment has a really fantastic collaborative network, and we'd like to be, you know, be part of supporting this important area into the future.
Thank you, Professor McDonald, for your presentation today. We will be posting today's webinar on the Community Care Smart Assistive Technology Collaborative. So if you haven't done already, please go on and register online. You will be able to gain access to hundreds of resources, exclusive events, and forums on assistive technology and innovation in primary health. I'd like to thank the members of the collaborative research team in the background for coordinating today's webinar and today's guest speaker, Professor McDonald. This will be our last webinar for 2023, so thank you for joining us for a successful year. I'd like to take the opportunity on behalf of the Community Care Smart Assistive Technology Collaborative and Global Community Resourcing team to wish everyone a happy holiday season and a happy new year. We look forward to collaborating in 2024. Thank you everyone for joining us today.